Let's bring in Nick Harper. He's been covering developments in New York. Very, very busy day for him. He's been joining us, or rather he's joining us now live on the program at the moment. So Nick, the two strands to this story that we're following. Let's start with the UN Security Council. What's the latest from there?
Yeah, Rama, as you mentioned, a busy day here in New York City, those two competing things taking place. In the UN Security Council, we have heard plenty of condemnation of what the United States did over the weekend, that operation against Venezuela, the seizure of the Venezuelan president and the extradition of him here to the United States. In particular, we heard from a UN official who warned about the destabilizing effect of what all of this might do to the region, that it might make things worse throughout the Latin American area. We also heard from China's representative who very firmly pushed back against the United States and once again called for the immediate release of Nicolás Maduro and his wife. That representative said as a permanent member, the United States had disregarded concerns of the international community and had wantonly trampled on Venezuela's sovereignty. The US representative, though, pushed back, suggesting that the US had not violated the UN Charter, as various members suggested, instead saying that Nicolás Maduro was responsible for attacks that had destabilized the Western Hemisphere and the repression of the people of Venezuela. It was a testy meeting, as expected, plenty of pushback on both sides, but what we didn't see, a draft resolution being presented, because if we had one calling for the release of Maduro, for example, that's something that the US would likely have vetoed with its power to do so.
So Nicolás Maduro, his wife, son, and at least two former justice ministers, I believe, they're also facing charges in New York as well. They've pleaded not guilty, at least him and his wife have in the last hour. Walk us through the main charges in that indictment.
Yeah, a dramatic hearing, but also a short hearing as expected, and plenty of security. It was also the first time that we've heard from Nicolás Maduro since he was seized by the United States. Just to run you through the four charges that he is facing, very serious charges: narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. The US also saying that he was the de facto but illegitimate leader of Venezuela. In the courtroom, he said that he was still the president. He said that he had been kidnapped and instead maintained that he was innocent, not guilty, and a decent man. A short appearance by him for what will be a very lengthy legal process that will go on likely for months and months. We will not see him back in the courtroom until March the 17th. That will be the next hearing for him and his wife.
Indeed, it's going to be really fascinating to see the legal arguments that are presented in court around his forcible seizure. One last question for you, Nick, because the American president said the country will run, his words, run Venezuela. Now, short of invading and occupying the country with American troops, pretty much the Iraq invasion playbook from 2003, how exactly will that happen?
Well, that's it, and that's the big fear, that we've seen what happened in Iraq, we've seen what happened in Afghanistan, those prolonged conflicts, the inability of the US to provide stability or really a working government that had a long-term impact on those countries. There is concern that what the US is trying to do now, with that implication of running Venezuela, could not have potentially a good result. Over the weekend, we heard from various US officials who seemed to be walking back the president's initial assertion about running the country, including the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, suggesting that the US would not be really meddling in the day-to-day operations of Venezuela, but would have oversight of how things were run. And he also warned that simply, if things were not going in the right direction from a US perspective, the US had its naval armada on Venezuela's coastline to be used as leverage against whoever is in charge. But it's still unclear exactly who will be running the country, how it will work. But remember, Donald Trump viewing it as a business opportunity. He wants to get his hands on those vast oil reserves, the largest crude oil reserves in the world. He's promised that US companies will go in, invest billions, and also extract that oil and sell it to multiple countries around the world. We don't know how that's going to work, but Rama, it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out.